Welcome back to part two of book club. My name is Nandini. I'm pretty sure you can hear a dog in the background and children shouting, but it is a Saturday, so it is time for us to carry on with our analysis, our experiences with this book, All About Love by Bell Hooks. Um, Boy, was there a lot to highlight and talk about in the first and the second chapter, which is what we're going to be covering today. The first chapter's title is Clarity, Give Love Words. And then the second chapter is Justice, Childhood Love Lessons. I have so much that I want to cover that I want to start right away. But before I do, check the description because you can join me in these meetings. I am recording them live. We meet on Zoom, and at the moment, the time is 1:30 p.m. In the UK, GMT, and 7 p.m. Yes, right now it's 7 p.m. in India, so 7 p.m. IST, Indian Standard Time. So I would love to have you and hear about your opinions, as well as your experience. We're making this very personal rather than just theoretical, okay? So let's get into it. The first chapter is called Clarity, Give Love Words, and the page has a quote, a passage, like a whole maybe paragraph, a part of a paragraph, by Diane Ackerman. As a society, we are embarrassed by love. We treat it as if it were an obscenity. We reluctantly admit to it. Even saying the word makes us stumble and blush. Love is the most important thing in our lives, a passion for which we would fight or die. And yet we're reluctant to linger over its names. Without a supple vocabulary, we can't even talk or think about it directly. It's too much truth, guys, too much truth in this. So, since the chapter is called Clarity, Give Love Words, I'm really, really happy that we're going to be starting with definitions of love. So in my version, on page 3, I have underlined a few parts and I'm just going to read them. There's just so much I want to cover that I might just read chunks of text. And if I have something to say or share, I'll do that. And I would love for you to join me. You can do so in the comments as well. Here we go. Our confusion about what we mean when we use the word love is the source of our difficulty in loving. If our society had a commonly held understanding of the meaning of love, the act of love would not be so mystifying, right? I think this is absolutely true, so much so that I'm going to go to the end of the chapter, this is literally the last paragraph of the chapter. The beginning of it goes, definitions are vital starting points for the imagination. What we cannot imagine cannot come into being. A good definition marks our starting point and lets us know where we want to end up. Defining words, defining what does this actually mean? What does love mean to you? That is so, so important because how else? How else will we know whether we are being loved or whether we are genuinely loving? Okay, that was page 14, but I'm going to come back to the beginning now. So on page 4, Bell Hooks goes on to quote Diane Ackerman a few more times. Her book, A Natural History of Love, in that, Diane Ackerman declares, love is the great intangible. And she goes on to say that everyone admits that love is wonderful and necessary, yet no one can agree on what it is. We use the word love in such a sloppy way that it can mean almost nothing or absolutely everything. And having said all these words, Diane Ackerman never actually offers a definition of love, which I don't like. I like that Bell Hooks does, though. And she, continues to take us on the journey on the definition of love that she has come to accept and that she uses, I guess. And it's by M. Scott Peck's classic self-help book, The Road Less Traveled, which I haven't read. I thought that was a poem by Robert Frost. I don't know. And I'm just going to quote, echoing the work of Eric Fromm, isn't it Fromm? Eric Fromm? He defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Explaining further, he continues, and this part is so good. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love, we choose to love. Since the choice must be made to nurture growth, this definition counters the more widely accepted assumption that we love instinctually. So, not seeing love as a thing that we receive, but as an action that we do. So, if we're doing the action, we should know what we're doing when we're loving. I love that. So, love is as love does, it's an act of will. And when we do an action, we choose to do it. So, there's choice implied. And if it's something that we're choosing to do, how can it be instinct? You know, instinctually, we do things like, I was explaining the two words voluntary and involuntary to one of my students. I'm an English teacher, and I talked about how instinct it's an involuntary action. We don't choose to do it. If someone throws a ball at you and it's coming at your face, what do? You instinctively blink and duck, right? You blink. That wasn't a choice. It's something that your body naturally did. So love, I don't believe love is just a feeling. Isn't there's so many other words we should be using, like maybe limerence or lust or cathexis, which comes up a little later on. So let's move on to that. Later on in on the same page, page number 5 in my version, affection is only one ingredient of love. To truly love, we must learn to mix various ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust, as well as honest and open communication. I like this definition a lot. This will be my go-to definition. And I think it's in the second chapter where Bell Hooks talks about how even babies are very affectionate. So perhaps affection, giving and receiving affection may be potentially instinctual, just as a smile is brought upon a person's face when they see something pleasant, or laughter just sort of comes out. We don't choose to laugh. It sometimes just bubbles up and it comes out, right? And these are very pleasurable feelings. But it would be nice to think of love as an action that is decided upon, that is something that perhaps is a combination of not just the feeling that we have, but also something that we choose to do to show someone that we love them and also choose to receive. Because many times there may be circumstances where somebody feels like what they're doing is loving, but if the person that they're loving is not being able to receive that love, there's an issue there, isn't there? Okay. Further down the paragraph, when we feel deeply drawn to someone, we cathect with them. That is, we invest feelings or emotion in them. The process of investment wherein a loved one becomes important to us is called cathexis. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I should have checked the pronunciation before coming to this meeting, but I didn't. I'm sorry about that. I will check though. I will definitely check. In his book, Peck rightly emphasizes that most of us confuse cathecting with loving. We all know how often individuals feeling connected to someone through the process of cathecting insist that they love the other person, even if, and I've underlined this twice and put exclamation marks, even if they are hurting or neglecting them. There are so many instances of this. How can you say you love someone and at the same time bring them down with your words, neglect them, abuse them? No, hurt them, you know? Mm-mm. Since their feeling is that of cathexis, they insist that what they feel is love. Mm-mm. When we understand, okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I got to just read the main parts. Somebody stop. These chapters were so good. I have to appreciate Bell Hooks's writing style. I've read quite a few self-help books, psychology books, not that many feminist books, I have to say, and as well as some spiritual books as well. And a lot of these books that I've read are either incredibly boring because they're just like anecdote after anecdote after anecdote after anecdote. Let's say, for example, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I haven't read all of that book, but it's just like one story after another story after another story. And it's just like, okay, a little boring. Um, and on the other hand, there are some books which are like just packed with theory and statistics and like blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, whoa, like so many definitions, all this terminology. And it's heavy, it's really heavy to read. Whereas this is such a breeze, it's so easy to read and there's just so much value in it. And I think the other reason why I love it so much is because it's getting to the core of how I have genuinely been feeling my whole life. And yet I couldn't verbalize as well as Bell Hooks is verbalizing, like there's a whole book on this, how I've been feeling. And when I say how I've been feeling, I know I never came up with such a great comprehensive definition of love, but I certainly knew what love wasn't. But I couldn't argue with that because it's like you're arguing with somebody else's feelings. And I'm just like, love is not meant to be pain. It's not meant to be hurtful or neglectful or manipulative. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. Page 6, love and abuse cannot coexist. Abuse and neglect are, by definition, the opposites of nurturance and care. An overwhelming majority, a little further down, an overwhelming majority of us come from dysfunctional families in which we were taught we were not okay, where we were shamed, verbally and or physically abused, and emotionally neglected, even as we were also taught to believe that we were loved. For most folks, it's just too threatening to embrace a definition of love that would no longer enable us to see love as present in our families. The reason why I couldn't read this book a few years ago, despite having the support of a book club to read it within, was because of this. After reading, I'm pretty sure I read the first 2 chapters last time, which was probably in 2021. So yeah, around 2 years ago. The reason why this book really messed me up was because, I mean, I'd always known, it's no surprise to anyone who knows me personally or anyone who watches my channel, which is called Figuring It Out Alive, that I grew up in a very, very, very abusive household. And so I don't believe I was very loved growing up. And it's not just a belief. Like that's my reality. My reality is that I was not loved growing up. And yet the thing that really messed with me was the thinking and knowing and like this book revealing to me that I myself didn't know how to love. And what really messed me up was realizing that I didn't even know how to love my brother. And I love that guy very, very much. I would like to love him very much. And I wasn't doing all those things. I was not showing respect, care, trust, knowledge of him, and responsibility, and all those other things, like open and honest communication. I was trying. And yet I could see that I was hurting him and I was mean to him. I was. And it was just too much. It's too much to accept that if my mission in life is to create a safe space for absolutely everyone, especially the most vulnerable people, then I should know how to love. And I really don't know how to love. And Bell Hooks writes about this as well. Too many of us need to cling to a notion of love that either makes abuse acceptable or at least makes it seem that whatever happened was not that bad. Bell Hooks goes on to talk about her problems with the word dysfunctional before she went to see a therapist who made her understand what dysfunctional means. And then she could accept that word and use it to describe her family. Moving on page 8, care is a dimension of love, but simply giving care does not mean that we are loving. That was also really hard for me because the first time around when I read this book, I thought, well, love just means care. No, it's much, much, much more than that. What was quite interesting, I've written over here, the next paragraph, the notation I made was opposite of me. It turns out that there are adults who like to, and I guess I've come across some of these adults myself, who despite having a sort of mixed bag of experiences in their childhood, they tend to like deny the negative experiences and just focus their memories on the positive ones to believe that they were loved, even if they didn't feel loved growing up, even if their life has not had the result of having a loving childhood. They cling to that feeling of no, my parents obviously loved me, my caretaker loved me, my grandma loved me, because remember that one time, or like those times when we had some good days, um so that was quite interesting to see because for me, I've probably done the opposite, even if there were times where there weren't that many. I think I can say that there weren't many times when my family wasn't explicitly cruel to me and my brother. But I just remember the bad parts, so that was quite interesting. And the other really cool thing that was mentioned here is like usually it requires some therapeutic intervention, whether through literature that teaches and enlightens us, or therapy, before many of us can even begin to critically examine childhood experiences and acknowledge the ways in which they have had an impact on our adult behavior. I remember when I was in 6th grade, I believe, I was introduced to the word abuse. And before I even, like, that word didn't exist in my world, the word abuse. So the moment like I got that word in my vocabulary, I was like, yo, there's a word for what I experience on a day-to-day basis. So words, clarity, words literally give you clarity. They they can the experience you have on this earth, how can you share that with another person without words, man? Damn. Okay, so I've written something and my notation is concise, exclamation mark. Most of us find it difficult to accept a definition of love that says that we are never loved in a context where there is abuse. Most psychologically and or physically abused children have been taught by parenting adults that love can coexist with abuse, and in extreme cases that abuse is an expression of love. This faulty thinking often shapes our adult perceptions of love, which is the reason why there are a lot of people, let's say women, who end up in abusive relationships when they grow up as well, because they were abused and demeaned when they were children. Further on in the paragraph, years of therapy and critical reflection enabled me to accept that there is no stigma attached to acknowledging a lack of love in one's primary relationships. And if one's goal is self-recovery, to be well in one's soul, honestly and realistically confronting lovelessness is part of the healing process. It is such a vulnerable feeling to say that you didn't have something or you didn't know something. It is something that can make us feel less than in society. It is something that, I don't know why, but it makes us feel so vulnerable, as though we can easily be targeted if we're openly admitting these things. But are we doing that from a place of power and with the intention to heal? Or are we doing it with just because some people do this to label themselves as victims as well, right? That's a really tricky thing to navigate. I'll just leave it that at that. A lack of sustained love does not mean the absence of care, affection, or pleasure. Oof. I think a lot of adults need to hear this. A lack of sustained love does not mean the absence of care, affection, or pleasure. We're really, really elevating the bar here, genuinely. In order to change the lovelessness in my primary relationships, I had to first learn anew the meaning of love, and from there, learn how to be loving. I would say this book, in combination with the book on nonviolent communication, these two books, they've completely changed my relationship with my brother to being a much, much, much better one. I should say that, very positively. They've changed it. It still took years for me to let go of the learned patterns of behavior that negated my capacity to give and receive love. My bro, if you're listening to this, it's gonna take me some more time to be better, okay? But at least I question it now. At least I have a place um to start, comparing my natural behavior and my natural inclinations. Okay. There's so much gold in this, everyone. So please do read it. And there are also audiobook versions available for free to listen to here on YouTube, which may not exactly be official, let's say, but nevertheless, they exist. So this is solid. That every word is worth reading slash listening to. I'm just going over the good parts, and there's so many good parts. Even though we are obsessed with the idea of love, the truth is that most of us live relatively decent, somewhat satisfying lives, even if we often feel that love is lacking, and I would add, and or absent permanently from our lives. This is so important to just realize that we can live without love. And in many, many, many ways, I would say, oh, if you're yearning for love and there are other aspects of your life and your own, everything, things in your life that um, have to also be dealt with or improved, trying to search for love from another when there's still areas to be improved, mm-mm. Take it from my experience, everyone, like working on oneself and improving things for oneself, then it's like if you want an ideal partner who's over here and you're over here and you want that partner to like love you so that you can also get up there, versus like that's probably not going to happen. It's quite likely that the partner you're going to get is either going to be below you, seeking for you to, hold them up, or they're going to just be at this level or this level. If you want a partner who's at, let's say, this level, try to just elevate yourself without thinking about it. Just be like, you know what? I don't actually want a partner who's at that level, or maybe I do, but I would love to be at that level, but I don't need a partner for that. Like, we just got to understand we don't actually need a partner to pull us up. We can be our own partner and just be like, yo, next level, next level. Ooh, well done. A little higher. Oh my gosh, a little higher. Things are so much better here and better here and better here. And who knows who you may meet once you get closer to that level, you know? That was just something I wanted to throw in. Gotta carry on now. Okay, in these relationships, the relationships that do not have love or sustained love, in these relationships, we share genuine affection and or care. For most of us, that feels like enough because it is usually a lot more than we received in our families of origin. Undoubtedly, Many of us are more comfortable with the notion that love can mean anything to anybody precisely because when we define it with precision and clarity, it brings us face to face with our lacks, with terrible alienation. So this is why it's like, do I just want to be cared for? Or do I want to be cared for and show and receive commitment, knowledge, respect, trust, responsibility, open and honest communication, and whatever else is there, I think I've covered almost all of it. And yeah, I think I did. Okay. Um, I've circled this. Had I been given a clear definition of love earlier in my life, it would not have taken me so long to become a more loving person. Had I shared with others a common understanding of what it means to love, it would have been easier to create love. And next to this, I wrote, it's never too late. Okay, it's never too late to start now. It's never too late to start deprogramming yourself today. Do it today, right? Start today. And things will not turn around. There won't be like you switch your, you snap your fingers or you read a book and boom, your whole life is different. No, everything takes time. Many recent books on love continue to insist that definitions of love are unnecessary and meaningless. Or worse, the authors suggest love should mean something different to men than it does to women. ... This type of literature is popular because it does not demand a change in fixed ways of thinking about gender roles, culture, or love, rather than sharing strategies that would help us become more loving. It actually encourages everyone to adapt to circumstances where love is lacking. No, we're not going to do that anymore. We're raising the bar. We're only going to want love. Okay, love. Once we feel cared for, once we have affection and pleasure and all that, you might feel like something's lacking. And when you do, return to this definition of love and then you'll be like, damn, this isn't love. This is affection. This is care. This is pleasure. It's not love though. This really, really bothers me. This whole, the gender thing, the whole men are from Mars and women are from Venus thing, the whole like women expect this in love and men just want a sandwich and a foot rub or whatever. No, I don't care. Garbage, nonsense. Since many women believe all those quotes were from page 11. Now we're moving on to page 12 in my version. Since many women believe they will never know fulfilling love, they are willing to settle for strategies that help ease the pain and increase the peace, pleasure, and playfulness in existing relationships, particularly romantic ones. And I've written next to this the problem with marriage. A lot of people I know, once they get married, it's a permanent state of being with your spouse, no matter how abusive they may be, no matter how uncaring they may be, no matter how many terrible in-laws they come with. Marriage is seen as that's it. You're locked in for life, this lifetime. This is the ordeal. This is my karma, as many people say. So a lot of the self-help books that they may flock to would be like, well, how do I gain peace, or how do I it's always how do I start feeling a little better about my very, very terrible circumstances here? That's the problem with marriage. And that's because they believe that they're stuck in it for life. And I'm just going to say it's never too late to start. It's never too late to change. And you've got to decide how radically you want to change. And, attempt the techniques that you think will bring peace, that will bring you the satisfaction that you need. And if you don't, if you're not able to change things, there's always a way to change things. That's all I'm going to say. And the way may be something that you may not want to do, but it just depends. Like, what do you want to do more? Do you want to leave this person forever in order to see what's better? Or do you want to stay with this person forever, knowing what you have? And also probably being able to see in which direction things are going and will go in the future. On to page 13 in my version. To begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. This is a bit you're thinking a little too positively, Bell Hooks. Like when Bell Hooks wrote this, was there a term for gaslighting? Because there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. So thinking of love as an action, she's saying that if you think of it as an action, then that means that people say, well, here, I'm loving you. Accountability, responsibility, I don't know. But the explanation is just so good, so I'm going to read it, okay? I've written OMG in capital letters next to it. We are often taught we have no control over our feelings, which is why love should not be a feeling, because it's not in your control. Yet most of us accept that we choose our actions. That intention and will inform what we do, action, do. We also accept that our actions have consequences. To think of actions shaping feelings is one way we rid ourselves of conventionally accepted assumptions, such as that parents love their children, or that one simply falls in love without exercising will or choice, that there are such things as crimes of passion, i.e., he killed her because he loved her so much. If we were constantly remembering that love is as love does, we would not use the word in a manner that devalues and degrades its meaning. When we are loving, we openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. I think I forgot affection last time when I was reciting those words. So these definitions, they're a map, aren't they? To navigate whether or not we're on the course of loving action, or have we strayed off? Are we veering into just plain old care or affection or pleasure rather than, bring it back to love, show everything else if you want to. Love is a choice. You don't have to love everyone. You don't have to love everybody. Okay, then. That was heavy and great. Let's move on to chapter 2, Justice. Childhood love lessons. This is so much heavier. Page 17, the first page of the chapter. As a child, love was always and only about good feeling. But then, why was harsh punishment a gesture of love? As children do, we pretend to accept this grown-up logic, but we know in our hearts that it was not right. We knew it was a lie. Because as kids, we think love is just a good feeling, but then how are our parents hurting us and making us feel bad and saying it's love? Let's see. On the flip side, there are masses of children who grow up confident love is a good feeling and who are never punished, who are allowed to believe that love is only about getting your needs met and your desires satisfied. In their child's mind, love is not about what they have to give. Love is mostly something given to them. They receive it. This is on page 18. Further down, as children grow, they associate love more with acts of attention, affection, and caring. So it's both. What I mean by that is, at the beginning, she was talking about children who seem to be abused, neglected, their needs are not met. And so they're like, do our parents really love us? It's a question. And then on the other side, there are children who get a lot of care, get a lot of affection and attention. And anytime their parent doesn't do that, or they see other parents not do that, they're like, well, that's a bad parent. They don't love their kid. But actually, it's neither of these things, is it? Page 19. Every day, thousands of children in our culture are verbally and physically abused, starved, tortured, and murdered. They are the true victims of intimate terrorism in that they have no collective voice and no rights. They remain the property of parenting adults to do with as they will. Until we live in a culture that not only respects but also upholds basic civil rights for children, most children will not know love. In our culture, the private family dwelling is the one institutionalized sphere of power that can easily be autocratic and fascistic. As absolute rulers, parents can usually decide without any intervention what is best for their children. If children's rights are taken away in any domestic household, they have no legal recourse. Even women have domestic abuse centers and things, right? But children don't have that. I mean, it literally says that children can only rely on well-meaning adults to assist them if they're being exploited and oppressed in the home. It must have been quite clear to several teachers, I would say three teachers, no, two teachers, that I was not having the best of times at home. The first was a teacher in my primary school. Didn't do anything about it. And then the other was a teacher who I disclosed to, actually. I didn't even know the word disclose, but a teacher in my early high school. And that teacher's response was, oh, well, you know, teenagers are just hormonal. So he he literally made it seem as though I was just hormonal and making it up because I was a teenager. I didn't like that. I actually lost a lot of respect for that teacher when that happened. It broke me because obviously I wouldn't have disclosed to a person I didn't trust. So anyway, I feel like I'm gonna cry. And I think what's even worse is I've been spending some time with some people who happen to be my family. Okay, they're my family, okay? And the way that they talk about their children, they've literally one of them said, they're our property. Like, you know, we own them. And he was saying this in a way where it was like, you know, my vision is that my son, you know, let my son get a job and settle down, get married, and then I want him to live with me. I mean, he's mine, he's my property, so obviously he has to live with me. And I was just like, whoa, culture. So even if a child is older, for the parents to think of the children who are older as well as property, not just the young ones. We all know that irrespective of class or race, other adults rarely intervene to question or challenge their peers, what their peers are doing with their children. In the last year, I've been in a lot of adult spaces that I've found really, really abhorrent and repulsive. So if anyone from those spirits are watching this, I doubt anyone will be, but if they are, that's the truth of it. And so in those spheres, the vast majority of my peers, I would say, are people who are at least 10 to 20 years older than me and have children. And on the few occasions when I've heard what they say about their children, this is what I do. I keep my mouth shut. Despite, I'm always on the child side, okay? I'm always going to be on the child side. But yeah, there are a lot of parents out there who speak with a lot of authority on parenting and want to become authorities on parenting, despite being, in my opinion, very bad parents. That's all I'm going to say about that. There's a really like there are 2 pages of like solid examples from Bell Hooks's own life, but I'm gonna talk about so she talks about like being in like this gathering of upper middle class slash richer liberal people who are all talking about beating and parenting, you know, the choice of using beating children as punishment. And she goes on to say that men just say, well, you know, it was done to us, it was good for us. And women are like, well, it's not what I want to do, but, you know, sometimes I have to. And there's this one woman who was like, well, I don't beat my children. I just like pinch them really, really hard until they stop doing the thing that they're not supposed to be doing. And Bell Hooks is like in that space, much like me in the spaces I'm in, and just going like, what on earth am I listening to? And how is everybody agreeing with this? And what like where is hearts are rock solid? There's no heart, there's no love here. And I'm just gonna read this one part. A young professional, the mother of a small boy, bragged about the fact that she did not hit, that when her son misbehaved, she clamped down on his flesh, pinching him until he got the message. But this too is a form of coercive abuse. The other guests who were there in the conversation supported this young mother and her husband in their methods. I was astounded. I was a lone voice speaking out for the rights of children. Later, with other people, I suggested that had we all been listening to a man tell us that every time his wife or girlfriend does something that he does not like, he just clamps down on her flesh, pinching as hard as he can, everyone would be appalled. They would have seen the action as both coercive and abusive, yet they could not acknowledge that it was wrong for an adult to hurt a child in this way. All the parents in that room claim that they are loving. All the people in that room were college educated. Most call themselves good liberals, supportive of civil rights and feminism. But when it came to the rights of children, they had a different standard. Moving on to page 22, abuse and neglect negate love. They negate love. That means that they cancel love out. Care and affirmation, the opposite of abuse and humiliation, are the foundations of love, are the foundation of love. No one can rightfully claim to be loving when behaving abusively. I am so firm on this, man. Yet parents do this all the time in our culture. Children are told that they are loved even though they are being abused. Then there's something else that wrecks me, and I really feel like I'm gonna cry now. Um, there's an author, Bob Shelby, who wrote in a book which seemed to be, I guess, a compilation of personal stories. The book is called Boyhood Growing Up Male. And in that, there's an essay called When My Father Hit Me. It's written by Bob Shelby. I'm just going to read little parts of it. By physically hitting my mother and me, he, the father, effectively stopped us from reacting to his humiliation of us. We ceased to protest his violations of our boundaries and his ignoring our sense of being individuals with needs and demands and rights of our own. I just love the part where he goes that beating was a way for him to stop us from acknowledging that he was humiliating us. You know, it's like there's so many layers of abuse that one does. Like if a parent says something bad to a kid and the kid's like, well, you can't say that to me, don't talk back to me, right? Why are you talking back? It's like, well, one has to talk back. It's called a conversation, right? Okay, moving on. As the intensity of the pain of his hits increased, I felt the hurt in my heart. I realized what hurt me the most were my feelings of love for this man who was hitting me. I covered my love with a dark cloth of hate. This is too personal to me. So personal. So me, so me. Except in my case, it wasn't my father, it was my mother. And the abuse was not as physical in the later stages as it was emotional and yeah, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial as well. Um, Studies show that males and females who are violently humiliated and abused repeatedly with no caring intervention are likely to be dysfunctional and will be predisposed to abuse others violently. I wish that there were citations for this. I was thinking about, when I said that Bell Hooks is such a good writer, part of it was also because it's like she doesn't overload anything with citations and like studies and stuff. But this part where they talk about how people who are humiliated and abused tend to repeat the cycle. I wish I could know about statistics around that because this is like it's such a common thing that people talk about, like for us as people who are trying to heal themselves, we are called what are we called? Cycle the generation of breakers or something. So the other beautiful thing I came across sometime recently was, like pain is never hidden, pain is always felt, and it keeps being felt through the generations until there's a person who finally feels it. It's like it happens to one generation, they're numb to it, they perpetuate that onto the next generation, they become numb until there's like one person within some generation who's feeling all that pain and is unwilling to be numb to it and is like, okay, this has to be stopped. This just can't carry on. I have multiple people in my family who've taken their lives. I have multiple people in my family who suffer from very, 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 very severe mental health issues. In Jarvis J. Master's book, Finding Freedom, Writings from Death Row, on page 24, I'm going to read a few parts of the passages that have been quoted. Not until I read a series of books for adults who had been abused as children did I become committed to the process of examining my own childhood. This was talked about briefly previously as well, right? About how it's like until I knew the word abuse existed, I didn't have language to describe what I was experiencing. And the language, if I had tried to language it, it may have been met with, oh, that's your perspective, or is it really like that? Or, there's also a lot of shame and weirdness around telling people, well, my mom hates, like, if I was to tell people, well, my mom hates me, people often ask why. That's what they always ask. They don't ask how. They don't ask what makes you think that, although sometimes they do. But it's always why. Why does your mother hate you? How am I supposed to know? But now I know. But like how was I supposed to know? All I knew is that's how I felt. I felt as though my mom hated me. So language is so important. Reading these kinds of books can really elevate oneself if one is willing to go through the pain of sitting with it, letting it seep through and wash you afresh with the grief that you've tried to suppress and intellectualize and rationalize and deny even. It's heavy. Oh, I'm on the verge of tears again. Okay, when Master's mother dies, he feels grief that he cannot be with her. Masters is this author, Jarvis J. Masters, and the book is Finding Freedom, Writings from Death Row. Other inmates do not understand this longing since she neglected and abused him. He responds, and I quote, "She had neglected me, but am I to neglect myself as well by denying that I wished I'd been with her when she died, that I still love her?" Even on death row, Master's heart remains open, and he can honestly confess to longing to give and receive love. And I underline this part: being hurt by parenting adults rarely alters a child's desire to love and be loved by them. Among grown-ups who were wounded in childhood, the desire to be loved by uncaring parents persists, even when there's a clear acceptance of reality that this love will never be forthcoming. This is something that is such a personal experience that a lot of people I know who hear about this and who seem to have sympathy, they cannot empathize with this. Even women who are in my life, some of my closest friends who have experienced abuse from their own mothers, when they hear about me and how I'm dealing with my mother, they are so willing to just be like, "I'll cut it off," like blah, 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 blah. They're very cutthroat about it, like just like stop things. But then when I see how they approach things with their own parents, abusive parents, it's the same way as I do, and that is like, I mean, there are various times and various, levels and things. But what I mean to say is like, it's so easy for people to see someone else being abused and be like, cut that off, leave that place, victims of domestic violence as well. It's like only when they have care and support from people in their lives who are committed to them and respect them, do they even have a chance of leaving that situation? They cannot do it when they're only exposed to the abuse. It's just so, so difficult. And from the outside, it seems so easy. Well, leave him, right? Leave her, leave the situation. But when one is in it, it's like, I want to be loved. I give so much. It seems this is why I feel like love is a choice, and one should choose whom they love and whom they don't love, because love is not like, I really believe this right now. Maybe my mind will change about this, but for a lot of people, they think that if they do something, they can elicit the response of love or affection or pleasure. I think they want love, but all they could possibly get is that little bit of pleasure, a little bit of affection, a little bit of care. And they think they use that as an indication of love being present in that person. And as though it's like, oh, it's me because of how I am. I'm not being lovable enough, So how do I twist and turn? What do I wear? And how do I stand and what do I say to get love from that person? But it's like, wait a second. Love is a choice. A person can choose to love you. You can choose to love yourself. You can choose to love that individual. Do you see how you are choosing to be caring, responsible, committed, affectionate, trustworthy, and all these things to that person despite them not giving you reasons for it? Twist that around. It should work the same way for you. I'm going to stop talking now again. So yeah, it's all a personal experience. In the prologue to Creating Love, John Bradshaw calls this confusion about love mystification. He shares, "I was brought up to believe that love is rooted in blood relationships. You naturally loved anyone in your family. Love was not a choice. The love I learned about was bound by duty and obligation. My family taught me our culture's rules and beliefs about love, even with the best intentions. Our parents often confuse love with what we would now call abuse." Wow, www.confusion.com. So I feel like this is definitely the previous generation. They don't use like the generation above mine, the generation that was meant to raise me but didn't raise me. But yeah, that generation. Um, there's this whole saying about like Asians don't use the word love. Asian parents never say I love you. That's been my reality, but that's not the reality for everyone. The family I'm with now, same generation of people, I hear them say I love you to their sons all the time on the phone, all the time. And every time I'm just like, bro, not only do they genuinely seem to love their children, but they say it. They verbalize it by saying I love you, words of affirmation, right? But there's this whole thing about like, oh, love should only exist within the family, or, that's the only real love there is, or it's, we don't have to say it's love, it's just duty, it's obligation. Mm-mm. No, I disagree with that. I've had a different experience. On page 26 in my version, setting boundaries and teaching children how to set boundaries for themselves prior to misbehaving is an essential part of loving parenting. So, in these few pages, I think it's not exactly near oh, it is relatively near the end. Bell Hooks does go on to actually give a few examples of what loving parenting looks like when it comes to punishments. Loving parents work hard to discipline without punishment. This does not mean that they never punish, only that when they do punish, they choose punishments like timeouts or taking away of privileges. And if this seems too white or modern a concept, it any sort of punishment should not be cruel. It should not be abusive. It should not be manipulative. That's all I'm going to say. Try to use your creativity, parent. And if you're too tired to parent, why are you in the parent? Why are you a parent in the first place? Find someone else. That's also what's, written over here. Like if there are parents in single parenting households who are just stretched, find another adult who you believe who maybe shares the same values as you to start parenting your kids or be a co-parent to your kids. Because I mean, we all know raising children is the toughest job on earth, in my opinion, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people agree with that. So, trying to do it alone while you're exhausted, you're going to make mistakes. You just are. But don't. And if you have made mistakes so far, remember you can change things at any time if you choose to. You have to be brave enough to choose to do things differently. Page 27. Television can portray caring and loving family interaction. We desire our families to be like those we saw on the screens because we were witnessing loving parenting or loving households. I don't know if this applies to Indian TV. I'm guessing it doesn't. But Bell Hooks talks about these two shows called Leave It to Beaver and My Three Sons. I haven't watched either. I don't know anything about them. So when children, like in India, I guess people may like the children may be like, oh, I want to be like that family, but those families are always incredibly rich. They have mansions rather than houses. They're a joint family with many people. They wear like incredibly ornate jewelry and costumes and everything. So, I mean, that's what's on our televisions in the Indian soaps. So I don't know. I mean, growing up, what were we had Sonbury. I wished there could be a fairy who could come into my life. And when I was younger, everyone said I looked like her. Not Sonbury, but the young girl in Sonbury. Um, so yeah, there were like these magical fairies who came and solved all the problems. Or there was Shakalaka Boom Boom, in which this kid had this magic pencil and everything he drew could come to life, basically. So, bro, for any kid who doesn't have money spare, just draw the candy, you'll get it. Like those were the things that we saw growing up. Well, I did anyway. I'm sure there was a lot more to see. Let's see. So we were often told that families were not realistic, the families on the screens. The reality was, however, that parents who come from unloving homes have never learned how to love and cannot create loving home environments or see them as realistic when watching them on television. The reality that they are most familiar with and trust is the one they knew intimately. And we all have to remember that the realities that we grew up with and the realities we are currently experiencing, those are not the only realities that are available to us. We have this great, great gift of having the internet, of being on the internet. And this means that we can find people who live differently. You know, you've got this whole community of people who have tiny homes. And then you have all these celebrities with the architecture digest stuff. And then you've got like the Vogue's, 73 questions. You've got all these people living all these different lives. You have like these Christian couples and families who like share everything about their life on YouTube. There are mixed racial couples who are incredibly popular on YouTube with many, 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 many kids. There are people who have adopted children who also have YouTube channels, right? Find what fits well with your heart. I love there are these two parenting channels that I watch a lot of. One is Mama Cusses. I will link their channels on the side here. And then there's also the other, like the person that she has a podcast with, or maybe they have a podcast with. I'm not sure on their pronouns, but the other parent as well, the one with like super, super colorful hair and super, super colorful eye makeup. These parents, they follow gentle parenting. Like I don't have kids of my own, but it really, really warms my heart as a person who wants to reparent themselves and who is realizing that I still can reparent myself through, myself. It's so heartwarming to know that there are people out there who are becoming more and more and more and more popular. There are so many versions of reality. You're not stuck in this one. Trust me, you can get out of it. There was nothing utopian about the way problems were resolved on these shows. These shows that I don't know, Leave It to Beaver or My Three Sons. Parent and child discussion, critical reflection, and finding a way to make amends was usually the process by which misbehavior was addressed. On both shows, there was never just one parenting figure. In a loving household where there are several parental caregivers, when a child feels one parent is being unjust, that child can appeal to another adult for mediation, understanding, or support. There's a lot of passing the buck that happens, doesn't there? It's like the typical interaction I would have in my family, and I think this is true for a lot of, once again, stereotypical abusive Indian households. The mother always says no, the father always says yes. So the mother is always seen as the bad cop, and the father is always seen as the good cop. When in reality, in those stereotypical households, the mother's often the one who has to punish and parent, like genuinely parent the kids, whereas the father's just seen there as the provider for the family. So usually in those stereotypical households, the father does not actively parent the children, in which case the father gets fewer chances to mete out disciplines, punishment or whatever it is. This is so heavy, but it's so worth it. Okay. Yes. Ideally, there should be another adult present who does take responsibility, who does want to be involved, and who has the authority to do things for the child. Okay, I'm going to move on to page 29. We're nearly at the end. By revealing her willingness to accept criticism and her capacity to reflect on her behavior and change, the mother modeled for her daughter without losing dignity, authority, and the recognition that parents are not always right. I love this. Bell Hooks talks about being the godmother to a child. So one of her childhood friends was a single parent, and Bell Hooks became the godmother. And so in one situation, the child wanted to have pocket money, and her friend was like, no, I don't want to give pocket money because I can't afford it, and I don't think she needs it. She's just going to spend the money on candy. And Bell Hooks was like, well, let's set all those things aside for a moment and let's think in a more, well, I'm going to bring my perspective to this, right? Bell Hooks came in being Bell Hooks and was like, I know you've got the money to spare to give a little bit of a few coins or maybe $1 to your kid once in a while at whatever, interval you guys decide. So money's not the issue. Number two, if you did not grow up with an allowance, does that mean that your child has to grow up without an allowance? And in terms of the child spending money on the candy, why not just give the money and say that I just hope that you're not going to spend it all on candy and see how it goes. So it turns out that it was a great arrangement for the child, and the child did not spend all the money on candy. The child saved her the money to buy something else that she thought was worth buying. And that's where these lines come in, that by revealing her, the mother's willingness to accept criticism and her capacity to reflect on her behavior and change, the mother modeled for her daughter without losing dignity or authority the recognition that parents are not always right. This is so good. Last bit on page 30, second to last paragraph of this chapter. When we love children, we acknowledge by our every action that they are not property, that they have rights, that we respect and uphold their rights. If you've come this far, I would love to hear your thoughts. You can comment them below. You can also check out the description of this video for our next meeting, where we're going to be covering definitely the third chapter, and let's see how many pages that is. That's 19 pages. And what about chapter 4? 68. It might be a little tough because I am moving next week. I'm doing a big move. So maybe we'll only do one chapter, but check out the description. All the details will be there. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you love this book as much as I am currently loving it. I hope you're gaining a lot from it, and just know that everything can change, and love is the only thing that's worth life. It's worth effort. It's worth everything. And I love this book. And something makes me want to say, I love you. If you've come to this part, thank you very much for watching. I love you very much, and I hope to connect. Please subscribe. My name is Nandini, and I will see you in my next video.